Hello, I am Grayson Belfus, and this is Drepanosaurus unguicadatis. The clade Drepanosauromorpha is a group of late Triassic diapsid reptiles. They were typically less than 50 centimeters long and had a vertebral ridge over their shoulders, as well as a slender neck, grasping hands and feet, and in some species, they had a prehensile tail. Most species in this group are thought to be arboreal and insectivorous. With new discoveries, this clade continues to grow. The holotype for Drepanosaurus was discovered in 1980 by Pinna in Italy in the Zorzino Limestone Formation. It is a nearly complete articulated skeleton lacking a skull and cervical vertebra. Some scales on the tail were fossilized, but the skin impressions are poorly preserved. Fragmental remains of Drepanosaurus and its relatives are also found in the Chinle Formation. This is a recreation of the postcranial skeleton of Drepanosaurus unguicadatis. It was roughly 40 centimeters long and is the first of its clade to be found. It had a prehensile tail with the claw, tall neurospines, and a unique forelimb from other tetrapods. This is a recreation by Victor Leszek of what the Drepanosaurus may have looked like. This shows it in its arboreal habitat, using its claw to scratch at bark to gain access to insects. I find him incredibly cute. Since the skull is unknown, conjectural recreations use the skull of its close relative Megalanchosaurus. The etymology of Drepanosaurus can be translated to sickle lizard. Drepano comes from Greek, meaning curved like a sickle. This refers to its strong curved claws and its claw-like terminal caudal vertebra. Saurus is modern Latin borrowed from Greek, meaning reptile or lizard. This just means it resembles modern reptiles. Unguicadatis could be interpreted as clawtail. Unguis comes from Latin, meaning nail, claw, or hoof, and caudate, also from Latin, means having a tail, thus clawtail. So, sickle lizard clawtail, it's a pretty cool name. Unlike other members of Drepanosauromorpha, Drepanosaurus has a modified forelimb with a hypertrophied digit 2. This was likely evolved to support hook and pole digging. Drepanosaurus's forelimb morphology is unique from other tetrapods. Other tetrapods' forelimb morphology is modified for specific functions such as swimming, grasping, or flying. However, these modifications maintain key structural relationships such as a parallel ulna and radius, and proportionally shorter carpals. In Drepanosaurus, however, the radius and ulna are not parallel. The ulna is flattened and crescent-shaped and perpendicular to the radius. The radius has a flattened proximal process, which would restrict pronation and supination of the limb. It also possessed elongated carpals that are longer than the radius. This means it had a short forearm and a longer wrist. This represents a major deviation from tetrapod morphology that isn't seen in any other taxa. A modern analog for Drepanosaurus's hypertrophied second digit is the giant anteater, Myrmecophaga tridactyla. They have similarly adapted elongated second and third digits, which they use to dig and open insect nests. This comparison suggests that Drepanosaurus was also insectivorous. However, anteaters also use these claws for defense, which brings me to a bit of a tangent. In my research trying to find the forelimb of a giant anteater, I stumbled across an article that did contain a picture of an anteater forelimb. However, it was about a human death caused by a giant anteater. And this also included some pretty gruesome pictures of a man who was mauled by a giant anteater. Looking at a giant anteater, I did not expect it to be so vicious. He looks so friendly, yet he can do some serious damage. So looking at Drepanosaurus's claws, who knows what kind of damage they could have done. They may be small, but those are some pretty serious claws. The tail of Drepanosaurus is another unique adaptation. The terminal caudal vertebra is modified into a hooked spine, which resembles a claw. It is also likely that the tail is prehensile, which suggests that this was adapted for an arboreal environment. This hook spine is present in both Drepanosaurus and its close relative, Megalanchosaurus. Drepanosaurus's adaptations to an arboreal environment show similarities to modern chameleons. This includes their prehensile tails and grasping limbs. These characteristics allow for a stable tripodal stance. This would allow Drepanosaurus to bridge gaps in tree branches, as well as catch food with its free limb, and the hooked terminal caudal vertebra could be used to cling to the irregularities of tree bark. Since Drepanosaurus's skull is unknown, estimations are reliant on its close relative, Megalanchosaurus. Megalanchosaurus prionensis was discovered by Ernesto in the Zorzino limestone formation. Its skull is used conjecturally in depictions of Drepanosaurus. Megalanchosaurus's skull is bird-like with many small teeth. This bird-like skull suggests it was insectivorous. Megalanchosaurus also possessed a hooked terminal caudal vertebrae, such as in Drepanosaurus. Drepanosaurid morphology of the neck and pectoral girdle suggests that they could project their heads forward to catch prey, similar to a bird pecking. Their wide hypophyses of the cervical vertebra indicate powerful muscles for extending the neck. Furthermore, they had limited lateral mobility of the cervical vertebra, which prevented torsion, thus preventing the cervical vertebra from dislocating from rapid neck extension. Looking at their skull, their long slanting quadrate and beak-like jaws allow for rapid closing of the jaw, likely to snatch up insects. Finally, comparing Megalanchosaurus and Drepanosaurus, they have very similar body plans. However, compared to Drepanosaurus, Megalanchosaurus lacks the modified forelimb and has slightly different spinal morphology. You can see these differences in the recreations of their skeletons in Figure 5 and 15. On the left is a recreation of Megalanchosaurus by Ernesto. Unlike Megalanchosaurus and other Drepanosauromorpha, Drepanosaurus lacks a fusion between its central and its ribs on its dorsal spine. These are my citations. And thank you so much for listening.